Hi, I'm Kishore Keswani, Managing Director of Shore Auto Rubber Exports Private Limited in Pune.
Shore Auto Rubber Exports Private Limited was started by Kishore in 2003 with a focus on exports. Shore is involved in the manufacturing of industrial hand-wrapped complex silicone and rubber hoses and exports to more than 30 countries, deriving more than 95% from exports.
In 2020, I was introduced to Acumen M&A Advisors through my income tax consultant. And for their M&A process, they informed me how they go about contacting over 1,000 prospective buyers in India and outside of India. And it almost works like a mini IPO where you get many people on the discussion table so that you get a better valuation in the end. In the end, we ended up signing 27 NDAs and had management meetings with 18 companies. What was surprising for me that I thought that we will have more interest from overseas clients since we are 97% exports, but we got offers from 5 companies and all of them are multi-billion dollar corporations, out of which 4 of them were in India. So that was the interesting part for me.
Acumen reached out to close to 4,000 prospective buyers globally through its marketing process. This was done confidentially through emails, LinkedIn, physical letters, and cold calling. More than 200 responses were received from 30 plus countries, of which 27 NDAs were signed by interested parties across 10 plus countries.
18 management meetings were set up, of which 5 signed offers were received.
Finally, the deal was finalized with TVS Mobility, one of India's largest and oldest business groups. While TVS Mobility primarily served the domestic Indian market, Shore Auto focused on exports. The deal helped in creating synergies between the two companies. Acumen even reached out to Chinese and Japanese buyers in the local language, staying focused on the very process-driven engagement that they promise, rather than a relationship-driven M&A process. Acumen did not have past relationships with any of the prospective buyers, and hence the alignment was always with the client who's selling the business rather than a buyer with whom an M&A advisor has past relationships.
Acumen also conducted a self-due diligence which highlighted our strengths and weaknesses, and when we worked on our weaknesses, that in turn helped us to go through the due diligence which was conducted by one of the big 4. And when that due diligence was conducted, there were no major gaps thanks to all the homework that we had done in the past. Going through the deal, we had a pause for 8 months because of some market constraints, and throughout those 8 months, Acumen kept the customers warm, kept the communication going, so that when we started again after 8 months, we continued from where we left off.
During the entire process, Acumen stayed put, constantly in touch with the client, keeping the client updated on the response to the process, ensuring the client gets the right deal, the right buyer, the right partner, not just the right price, but also the structure the client was looking for, the terms that were workable for both the buyer and the seller, and of course, the value of the business. Having multiple offers helped the client to get a right deal.
Through the deal process, Acumen also taught me about some financial metrics like debt-free, cash-free, normalized working capital, which helped me learn these things through the deal process and help us negotiate better. One of the key things for me throughout the deal was how hands-off I was. I was free to run the business on a day-to-day basis. I was free to travel around the world like I normally do. And one day I was the owner of the company, the next day I was not. But it never felt like that, and I was just working from one day to another. So Acumen took it on very professionally, and it was something that I did not expect. It was really a breath of fresh air to be so hands-off in the deal.
Promoters focus on running the business while the transaction is going on. Acumen focuses on getting the best value for the client by focusing on timelines, innovative approach, and having the right attitude, where ultimately the deal gets consummated fairly for both the parties involved.
Another aspect which was very important for me was that it should be a right cultural fit. It should be a very ethical company that we work with. When I did the deal, I was only 44 years old. So another important thing for me was to continue working. And what was really nice was that the companies that we were talking to were not just financial investors, they were strategic investors, and they wanted me to continue being on board for the next 15-20 years, which I also wanted.